Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Jalman.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he is willing to impose sanctions on Russia, but Europe has to toughen up their sanction and act in a way that is proportional to the United States. We'll get you all the details on that.
And in Turkey, there's a massive protest in Ankara as thousands have gathered calling for President Erdogan to step down. They're protesting against a court case that could remove the main opposition leadership in Turkey. We'll bring you all the details on that front as well. Let's start with that.
Well, I'm ready to move ahead, but they have to do it. I think they will. But right now they're talking and they're not doing it. Look, they're buying oil from Russia.
President Donald Trump says he is willing to impose sanctions on Russia, but Europe has to toughen up their sanction and act in a way that is comparable with the United States.
Polish president approves deployment of NATO troops to Poland under Operation Eastern Sentry. This as Polish foreign minister claims that the recent Russian drone incursion is an attempt by Kremlin to test NATO's reactions.
We do know that the roommate that we had originally talked about, we can confirm that roommate is a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female.
Great.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox says investigators are not ready to discuss the motive behind the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, but he says the suspect had left-leaning political beliefs, lived with his trans partner, and not cooperating.
Israel strikes 4 high-rise buildings in Gaza on Sunday. According to an Israeli media report, the IDF estimates that occupying Gaza city will take about 6 months and completely cleansing the city will take even longer.
Two vessels from the Global Summit Flotilla depart from Greek island of Saros, heading for Gaza in a bid to challenge Israel's naval blockade.
The final stage of the Vuelta a España cycling race was abandoned in chaotic and violent scenes after groups of pro-Palestine protesters swamped the finish line area and presentation podium in central Madrid.
At least 50,000 people joined a protest by Turkey's main opposition, CHP, in Ankara Square, showing defiance ahead of a key court hearing that could remove the party's leadership.
US President Trump has reacted to the killing of the Indian man beheaded by a Cuban migrant, which happened in the US last week in Texas. He vows to make America safe again, says the time for being soft on illegal immigrant criminals is over.
The United Kingdom and United States are set to sign major technology and civil nuclear energy agreements during U.S. President Donald Trump's state visit, including a world-leading tech partnership and cutting steel and aluminum tariffs as part of broader bilateral trade efforts. The U.S. President Donald Trump will attend the funeral of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in Arizona.
A memorial event for Kirk will be held on the 21st of September in Glendale, Arizona. Kirk, a staunch ally of Trump, was killed by a single rifle shot during an outdoor event in Utah on the 10th of September. Trump also suggested that he was already using the government to look into his political adversaries when asked if he would investigate them after Kirk's death.
The problem is on the left. If you look at the problem is on the left. It's not on the right, like some people like to say on the right. The problem we have is on the left. And when you look at the agitators, you look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place, that's the left, that's not the right.
Do you plan on investigating?
We'll see. We'll be announcing. They're already under investigation. You know, they're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left.
The aftermath of Kirk's death has increasingly become a test of the public tolerance over political differences. Many Republicans and right-wing figures are pushing not only to punish the alleged killer, but those whose words they believe contributed to the death or dishonored it. But Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, has cautioned that the motive for the assassination has not been confirmed.
What we know so far, there are a couple things that we can confirm that have been reported. We can confirm that again, according to family and people that we're interviewing, he does come from a conservative family, but his ideology was very different than his family, and so that's part of it. We do know that the roommate that we had originally talked about, we can confirm that roommate is a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female.
A 19-year-old man has been arrested for allegedly destroying a memorial dedicated to Kirk in Phoenix. Phoenix police identified the suspect as Ryder Correll. The memorial was located at the headquarters of the conservative student group Turning Point USA, which Kirk had co-founded.
The supporters all over the world continue to mourn and remember Kirk. At a memorial event in France, members of the National Rally Party lauded Kirk's will to debate, adding that they were concerned for freedom of speech on the right.
Spain's far-right Vox paid tribute to Kirk during an event with supporters and guests from European parties in Madrid. The event showed pictures and videos of Kirk before attendees sang "Death is not the end" to pay final tribute. The US president has said that he is willing to impose sanctions on Russia, but Europe has to act in a way that is proportional to the US.
He said that Europe was still buying oil from Russia and that European sanctions against Russia were not tough enough.
Now, Trump also said that he was confident of the ceasefire talks between Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky, and that these talks will take place. He added that the talks would happen relatively soon, although he would be required to do all the talking since the two leaders hate each other.
Well, they're not doing the job. NATO has to get together. Europe has to get together and do it. Look, Europe they're my friends, but they're buying oil from Russia. So we can't be expected to be the only ones that are, full bore. But Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy oil. And the sanctions that they're putting on are not tough enough. And I'm willing to do sanctions, but they're going to have to toughen up their sanctions commensurate with what I'm doing.
Now, Trump's statement comes at a crucial juncture as Poland and Romania reportedly got buzzed by Russian drones. The Polish foreign minister has said Russian drones that entered Polish airspace were intended to test NATO's response without sparking a full-scale war. He briefed that the drones were all duds and rejected a suggestion by President Donald Trump that the incident could have been a mistake.
Alarmed by the twin drone incursion incidents, NATO has launched Operation Eastern Sentry to help protect the airspace of Poland and Eastern Europe. Video released by French armed forces showed Rafale fighter jets equipped with air-to-air missiles conducting combat air patrols in Poland's skies.
NATO says it is bulking up its defensive posture on its eastern flank bordering Belarus, Russia and Ukraine, with new equipment to deter potential Russian aggression following airspace violations by Russian drones.
The alliance supreme commander in Europe said that Operation Eastern Sentry will add equipment from France, Denmark, Germany and the UK to its existing air and ground-based defences. Romania, which also saw drone incursions, has strongly condemned the breach of its airspace, saying Moscow's actions posed a new challenge to Black Sea security.
EU's chief diplomat Kirk has termed Russia's drone incursion into Romania as reckless escalation. She said that the incident was yet another unacceptable breach of an EU member state's sovereignty.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky has urged Ukraine's allies to learn from Ukraine's cost-effective counter-drone tactics. Zelensky said that his country was ready to teach all partners how to defend themselves. He added that the Russians were exploring how to bring the war to Poland and the Baltic states.
Well, on the other hand, Russian Foreign Ministry's ambassador for Ukraine, Rodion Miroshnik, has accused Ukraine of not holding talks with Russia. He said that Ukraine was unwilling to hold talks that must have happened behind closed doors within working groups to elaborate the most acceptable model of a potential settlement.
And parallel to this, Russia continues to hold joint military drills with Belarus. The day 3 of the Zapad 2025 exercise showed coastal missile systems being fired and firing Ural missiles, military helicopters providing fire support to assault groups, and the Baltic Fleet forces practicing actions to provide emergency rescue to a ship.
Russia tested one of its most advanced and powerful weapons during the joint military drills with Belarus called Zapad or Rest.
Russian forces fired Zircon hypersonic missiles in the Barents Sea, and this comes amid rising tensions with NATO, while Moscow said that the exercises are defensive only. Take a look at this report. And Donald Trump has urged Israel to be very careful, and his statement comes following Israeli strikes on Qatar last week.
Now, this is while speaking to the media that Trump said that Israel needs to do something about Hamas, but Qatar is a great ally to the U.S.
But Qatar has been a great ally to the United States. A lot of people don't know that. I told the Emir, who I think is a wonderful person, actually, I said, you need better public relations because you don't really get the public relations. I mean, people talk of it so badly, and they shouldn't be. Qatar's been a very great ally. So Israel and everybody else, we have to be careful. When we attack people, we have to be careful.
Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani has strongly condemned Israel's recent attack in Doha, labeling it as state terrorism that targeted Hamas leaders and undermined the country's mediation efforts. He urged the international community to reject double standards and hold Israel accountable for its actions.
The message of this summit, which must reach everyone loud and clear, is solidarity with Qatar, Doha, from the Arab and Islamic worlds, against the aggression of the occupying Israeli state. This aggression which combines cowardice, treachery, and foolishness.
The Arab Islamic Summit's draft resolution condemned Israel's strikes in Qatar and other actions, saying they jeopardize efforts to normalize Arab-Israeli ties. The summit in Doha is being held to show solidarity with Qatar following the attacks on Hamas leaders.
During his trip to Jerusalem, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited the Western Wall, which is considered a sacred site in Judaism, along with Prime Minister Netanyahu. After the visit, Netanyahu said that Israeli-American alliance was as strong, as durable as the stones in the Western Wall. He also added that the alliance has never been stronger.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces struck multiple high-rise buildings in Gaza City on Sunday after issuing an evacuation warning to the citizens.
In the early hours of Monday, a huge explosion was seen over the Gaza Strip from southern Israel as IDF continues to pound the city. As per the Gaza Health Ministry, Israeli strikes have killed 64,803 Palestinians so far.
Displaced Palestinians returned to inspect their homes in the Hamad City residential area of Khan Yunis after the Israeli army classified it as a safe zone while urging Gaza City residents to evacuate. People described the area as a ghost town due to the massive destruction they witnessed. And thousands gathered in Ankara to protest a court case that could remove the main opposition leader from power.
The crowd filled the city centre, chanting for President Erdogan to step down while waving Turkish flags and party banners. Now, the demonstrations come ahead of a key court ruling, which is set for Monday, that is today. Judges will decide whether the 2023 Congress of the Republican People's Party is annulled or alleged procedural issues.
Now, such a decision would not only shake the leadership of Turkey's oldest political party, but also deepen political instability, unsettle financial markets, and potentially influence the timing of the next general election scheduled for 2028. Speaking at the protest, CHP leader Özgür Özel accused the current government of using the legal system to maintain its grip on power.
This case is political. The accusations are slander. Our comrades are innocent. What's being done is a coup against the future president, against the future government. We will resist, we will resist, we will resist.
According to reports, over the past year, more than 500 people linked to the CHP have been detained in the crackdown. This includes 17 sitting mayors in cities and municipalities controlled by the party. Among those caught in the crackdown is Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, who is considered the most prominent political rival to Turkish President Erdogan. And in the African continent, Kenya is trying a new approach to save its most vulnerable babies.
Now, a breast milk bank at Nairobi's biggest maternity hospital is providing life-saving milk to premature children. Many of them are still struggling to survive on this formula alone.
Now, a hospital in Nairobi, which is home to one of the few breast milk banks in sub-Saharan Africa. The facility helps premature babies, which was established in 2019 with support from Britain and the NGO Path. Mothers there feel guilty at first for not being able to provide their own milk to their respective babies, but the bank is keeping many babies fed and alive. Doctors here say breast milk makes a huge difference. It helps premature and underweight babies grow faster, reduces the risk of infections, passes on crucial antibodies.
Now, nurses handle the donations carefully. Mothers are counseled, tested for diseases, and being pumped under supervision. The milk is tested, pasteurized, and then stored for up to a year.
But funding and equipment remains a big challenge there. The hospital can only supply its own wards and 2 other hospitals. Officials say much of the equipment must be imported from Europe or the US. That makes it difficult to expand.
Now, with roughly 134,000 premature babies born in Kenya each year, doctors say expanding breast milk banks could be a game changer for child survival. And far-right leaders Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella have turned up the heat on President Macron and his new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu.
Speaking to thousands of supporters in Bordeaux, Le Pen demanded the dissolution of the National Assembly, calling for a return to the polls and a change in leadership. Her number two, Jordan Bardella, warned that if Lecornu fails to break with what he called Macron's crazy policies, the government will soon fall. The crowd chanted Marine President and Macron resign as the national rally promised to force new elections in the coming months.
For Le Pen, still facing an appeal in an EU funds case, the message was clear. Only a snap election can end what she called 8 years of Macronist rule.
What we need is a return to the spirit of the Fifth Republic and therefore, given the current situation, a return to the ballot box.
And in the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is condemning what he described as intimidation and violence following one of the largest far-right protests in the UK in its history.
Now, in his first public response, Starmer praised the country's values of tolerance and diversity and said that racial intimidation, violence, and hate will not be tolerated.
He also criticized attacks on police officials by some attendees who participated in the demonstration that has been dubbed the Unite the Kingdom rally. Officers were punched and they were kicked as some demonstrators tried to break into restricted areas near a nearby anti-racism march. Police say bottles, flares and other projectiles were thrown.
Now, an estimated 150,000 people attended the rally that was led by far-right figure Tommy Robinson near Downing Street on Saturday. Concerns about immigration appeared to motivate many of the attendees, many of whom were decked out with multiple British and English flags.
The event also featured far-right figures from Europe and North America, including a video message by tech billionaire Elon Musk, who called for the dissolution of Britain's parliament and the replacement of the centre-left Labour government. In the video, Musk claimed violence is coming.
Now, the clashes left 26 officers injured and led to 24 arrests, with more expected in the coming days. All right, let's turn to Loni, the largest lake in UK and Ireland, now facing a severe environmental crisis.
For the third year in a row, the waters have been choked by toxic blue-green algae. And this summer, the blooms have spread faster and farther than ever before. So extensive, they can even be seen from space. The pollution is being driven by agricultural runoff, untreated sewage, and the warming effects of climate change. The result? A lake that once supported fishing, water sports and wildlife is now covered in a thick green layer that looks like paint and smells of rotten eggs.
Local economies have been crippled, with tourism, small businesses and Europe's largest eel fishery forced to halt operations. The impact on wildlife has been devastating as well, with fish populations declining and birds struggling to survive. The regional government launched an action plan last year, but many measures remain undelivered, and some will not be completed for years. Environmental campaigners say time is running out.
With 40% of Northern Ireland's drinking water dependent on Loni, experts warn that the crisis could escalate into a public health emergency if authorities fail to act swiftly. All right, now let's look at the top stories making headlines across India as of now. A senior official of the Union Ministry of Finance has died, and 3 people, including his wife, They were injured after a BMW allegedly hit his motorcycle near Delhi Cantonment metro station on Ring Road. This happened on Sunday. As per the Delhi police, eyewitnesses said that the BMW was being driven by a woman and her husband and was also with her. They both took the injured to a hospital following the accident, and the senior diplomat succumbed during treatment while his wife is undergoing treatment as well. Police also said that the vehicles have been seized and the spot was examined by the crime team, and the FIR is being registered against the accused.
Firozpur police arrested 22-year-old man and seized 15.775 kilograms of heroin worth approximately 75 crore rupees. Initial probe revealed that the drug network is operated by an accused currently lodged in Kapurthala jail, with Pakistan-based smugglers sending the consignment. An FIR has been registered and further investigation is underway. The U.S. and allied paratroopers have carried out a dramatic airborne insertion in Egypt under exercise Bright Star 25.
Dropping into the desert and storming a target in a simulated raid, underscoring Washington's drive for joint combat readiness with regional and global partners. Take a look at this report.
It's time to slip into a short break. We'll be back with World Ini on the other side of this very short break. Keep watching Beyond What Is Fun.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel must be very careful about how it handles Qatar when about his message to Prime Minister Netanyahu regarding last week's Israeli strikes in Doha. Trump says Qatar has been a great ally to the United States.
Israel strikes 4 high-rise buildings in Gaza on Sunday. According to an Israeli media report, the IDF estimates that occupying Gaza city will take about 6 months and completely cleansing the city will take even longer.
They're already under investigation. They're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left.
President Donald Trump suggests many political adversaries are under major investigation following Charlie Kirk's death. Says he will attend a memorial for the late conservative activist in Arizona.
US President Trump has reacted to the killing of Chandra, the Indian man beheaded by a Cuban migrant last week in Texas. He vows to make America safe again, says the time for being soft on illegal immigrant criminals is over.
Delhi police says a senior official of the Union Ministry of Finance died and 3 people, including his wife, were injured after a BMW allegedly hit his motorcycle on the Ring Road on Sunday.
St. Peter's Square at Vatican filled with jubilant crowds as Pope Leo leads the traditional prayer on the day of his 70th birthday.
Manchester City returned to winning ways in the English Premier League in style. Erling Haaland scores twice as City beats rival Manchester United 3-0 at Etihad Stadium. Nepal's new interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has officially begun her tenure by pledging to act on the demands of protesters who led a nationwide movement against corruption.
Sushila Karki chaired her first meeting with Nepali government officials, making it clear that her leadership will align with the priorities of the youth-led protests that forced the previous administration out of office.
In the coming days, we have to work according to the thinking of the Gen Z youth generation.
Karki, the 73-year-old former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, announced she will step down within 6 months. handing over power to the newly elected parliament. She said that neither she nor her team is interested in power and that their focus is on serving the country.
I was compelled to take charge. This is why I am working with my team, and we are not here to taste power. My age does not support that either. We were asked to join and take charge. We are here to serve the country, and we will only stay here for 6 months, not more than that. After completing all the tasks and responsibilities, we will be free and we will hand it over to the new ministers and the parliament.
She also announced a financial assistance of 10 lakh Nepali rupees, nearly 7,000 US dollars, that is, and which will be provided to the families of those killed in the protests. She held a minute's silence for those killed in the unrest before meetings began in the key government complex of Singha Darbar, where several buildings were set on fire during the mass protests on Tuesday. At least, this is of course last week, at least 72 people were killed in 2 days of protests and 191 were injured.
Kirk was sworn in on Friday night as Nepal's first woman prime minister, bringing an end to days of political uncertainty. President Ramchandra Podel has dissolved parliament on the interim government's recommendation and announced that fresh elections will be held in March next year.
Meanwhile, across Nepal, local residents have mixed views on the new interim government, with many seeing Kirk's appointment as a hopeful step towards stability after the violent protests.
Previous governments failed the public. They only looked after their own people and ignored ordinary citizens. That's why they were thrown out.
The new government should first focus on rebuilding damaged buildings. Nepalis need homes, food, healthcare, education and jobs. They have no other demands.
And there's breaking news coming in. 2 men were arrested after an explosive device was found under a news media vehicle in Salt Lake City on Friday.
Now, the authorities do say these 2 men could face terrorism-related and weapons charges. Now, authorities also added that the 2 men were arrested on suspicion of placing an incendiary device under a vehicle related to Fox News local subsidiary.
And these developments are coming in from the US in Utah. Salt Lake City officials said that the explosive had been lit but failed to function. They have been identified as Adib Ahmed Nasir and Adil Ahmed Nasir. As per reports, Adib Ahmed is from Pakistan. On Friday, police and fire department bomb squads responded when a suspicious device was found under the vehicle parked near an occupied building. According to court records, investigators determined the bomb had been lit but failed to function, as Jodhsa just mentioned.
Now, the FBI has identified 2 suspects that we just mentioned and served a search warrant at a home in Matna, west of the city's downtown. 2 men aged 58 and 31 were arrested and can face charges related to weapons possession and threats of terrorism, ABC affiliate KTVX reported on Sunday.
There was no information about a possible motive behind this act, and the relationship between the 2 suspects wasn't immediately clear. News media have descended on Salt Lake City following last week's assassination of Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk. That's the latest we have for you at this point. These are developments coming in from the US in Utah, Salt Lake City. 2 men have been arrested after an explosive device was found under a news media vehicle in Salt Lake City. This happened on Friday. News has come out now. And they attempted to blow up the vehicle, but it did not function.
Yeah, it did ignite. Somehow it failed to function, and they have been identified as Adil Ahmed Nasir and Adil Ahmed Naseed. According to reports, Adib Ahmed Naseed is from Pakistan. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tadani sent us this report. Let's listen in.
Two men ages 58 and 31 were arrested in Magna, Utah after authorities say they planted an incendiary device under a news media van parked near an occupied building. The device had been lit but failed to detonate, averting a worse disaster. A search of their home turned up explosives, bomb-making materials, firearms, illegal drugs, and even fake weapons of mass destruction. One of the men faces federal charges including making terrorist threats and unlawful weapons possession. The other is also in custody, though charges for him are still being determined. The case has drawn intense attention because of its proximity geographically and in timing to the college event where Charlie Kirk, the conservative commentator, was assassinated. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, shifting our focus, tensions rose in Taiwan Strait after Taiwan's defense ministry says 27 Chinese warplanes were detected around the island.
The ministry added that 26 of them crossed the median line, entering Taiwan's air defense zone and pushing into the Western Pacific. The sorties included fighter jets, bombers and surveillance aircraft as well, and were backed by vessels from the Chinese Navy. Earlier, 31 planes and 13 warships were also spotted operating near Taiwan.
Now, Taiwan says it is closely monitoring the situation as tensions with Beijing continue to rise. Meanwhile, in a visit to Washington, Taiwan's top China policymaker Chiu Cheng warned that Beijing is actively preparing for war to retake the island.
He said a Chinese takeover would trigger a domino effect, undermining regional security and threatening the United States itself.
If Taiwan were to be taken over by China by force, it will trigger a domino effect, undermine the regional balance power, and direct threat the security and the prosperity of the United States.
China insists Taiwan is part of its territory, but the self-ruled island rejects Beijing's claims, insisting only its people can decide their future.
And the first U.S. interest rate cut since President Donald Trump took office for a second term is likely to take the spotlight in a week that will determine policy settings.
And this is, of course, for half of the world's 10 most traded currencies. Our next report gives you the details on that.
The 36-hour interest rate spree will begin in the first cut in the U.S. this year. That starts with the Bank of Canada and then the Federal Reserve on Wednesday, shifting to the Bank of England the following day and ending with the Bank of Japan. Central banks may either adjust borrowing costs or prepare investors for their intentions in 2025's final 3 months. By the end of the week, rates affecting 2/5 of the global economy, including 4 of the G7 nations, will be known. In the upcoming week's round of central bank meetings, the Fed and the Bank of Canada are expected to cut rates by 0.25%. Meanwhile, the Bank of England is forecast to hit pause. Investors will also eye the Bank of Japan on Friday after the recent political turmoil. The BOJ, though, is expected to remain on the sidelines for now. While investors' focus will remain on the Fed meeting, markets will watch for any hints of further easing by these central banks. An interest rate cut long sought by Trump's White House is expected to feature prominently this week. The standoff over monetary policy so far this year has pitted Trump against Fed Chair Jerome Powell's concerns about tariff-driven inflation. But last month, the Fed boss changed his tone and hinted at policy easing. While inflation remains elevated, the job numbers are looking worse. There has been limited jobs growth seen over the past 4 months. Recent data revisions suggest more than half of the jobs that have reportedly been added in the 12 months to March were found not to actually exist. A cooling economy and weakening jobs market will help to dampen inflation tied to tariffs. As a result, the Fed is now in a position to resume easing policy from somewhat restrictive territory towards a neutral footing. Further north, the Bank of Canada is widely expected to cut interest rates by 0.25%. That is to cushion Canada's economy, which is heavily exposed to Trump's US tariffs. The output contracted sharply in the June quarter, while employment fell for a second consecutive month in August. That pushed the unemployment rate up to 7.1%. In the UK, the jobs market is a wild card for the Bank of England. Investors will watch for any further weakness in the payroll figures. Apart from jobs data, the BO is particularly sensitive to food inflation right now, and this is set to notch above 5%. Services inflation is likely to inch lower. However, that shouldn't materially move the dial on the BO's rate-cutting path or expectations. Separately, at the European Central Bank, a two-day conference starting Wednesday may be the biggest venue for comments from policymakers. This comes after the ECB kept rates unchanged earlier this month. Overall, a $14 trillion rally has taken Wall Street stocks to record highs. That bull run is headed for an inflection point. Investors expect this Fed rate cut to be a boost for the animal spirit in stock markets. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
All right, market moves last week reflected optimism surrounding a Federal Reserve rate cut.
And at the same time, the run-up in safe assets points to worries of severe global economic slowdown from US President Trump's policies.
Gold once again was the top asset of choice last week. The yellow metal gained another 1.1% to a fresh record high last week after surging 3.5% in the first week of September. That comes post the 5% rally in August. Crude oil reversed the trend to gain 1.8% in September. And it's September's 8th week, and that is mainly on worries of crude flows from the threat of sanctions on Russia. Bitcoin, on the other hand, continued to hold its grounds and rally last week. The OG token is closing in on $117,000 with the all-time high of about $125,000 in sight. Despite millions of dollars in revenue from tariffs, the U.S. currency extended its decline last week.
Moving on to Asia-Pacific stock markets, barring the Aussie benchmark, regional indices gained. Japan's Nikkei was the top gainer, up over 4% last week. China's main stock index reversed losses to close out with a 1.5% gain. That rise points to a similar trading pattern seen in August when the benchmark rose 8%. Indian stocks extended their gains, rising 1.5% last week after posting over 1% gains during the first week of September.
In the Americas, Wall Street stocks hit fresh record highs in a $14 trillion rally. However, the bull run hinges on the Fed cutting rates in the coming week for the first time this year. Similarly, bets on the Bank of Canada will lower rates by 0.25%, had the country's benchmark stock index up nearly 1%. But the Brazilian benchmark reversed to edge lower. U.S. tariffs are starting to bite and reflect in market moves there.
Across the Atlantic, European stocks reflected broader optimism. The moves in benchmarks across the region showed a reversal in fortunes for investment, although the gains were only marginal compared to losses during the first week of September. The South African stock index too reversed to gain nearly 3%.
Well, let's now turn our attention to the overall economic outlook. Let's take a look at the Asia-Pacific region. Trump's trade war worries have weighed on the outlook for global economies. In Asia, India is still expected to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. While Trump's tariffs weigh on growth, the country's cut to taxes is expected to give economic activity a boost. However, the outlook for the rest of Asia remains negative. For China, the outlook is still marred by doubts from the recession in its real estate crisis. The economic outlook for Japan and Australia mirrored worries from Trump's trade war.
And in the Americas, the economic outlook for the US, Canada, Brazil and Argentina shows that trade tariffs are likely to hurt economic growth. For the US economy, recession bets are back after the latest jobs data showed a deteriorating outlook. Even as the Fed is widely expected to cut rates this week, inflation risks are likely to keep investors worried. Separately, the economic activity expectations for Canada, Brazil and Argentina were also cut.
On the other side of the Atlantic, the negative outlook was more widespread. The expectations show the clouds are darkening again for the UK and the other European economies. As feared, Germany's June quarter GDP data saw the economy falling back into an even worse contraction. The size of the German economy is currently still slightly below its 2019 level, and that is probably the best and most painful illustration of stagnation. The story was not very different for African economies, where the outlook remains negative.
Indian captain Surya Kumar Yadav has dedicated their 7-wicket victory over Pakistan in the Asia Cup to the country's armed forces.
Yadav also added that the men in blue stand with the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack. Listen to this.
Few things in life are ahead of sportsman spirit also. And I've already answered it. I've told it at the presentation as well that we actually stand with all the victims of Pahalgam terror attack, and we stand with their families, also express our solidarity. Also, as I said at PC, that we dedicate this win to our brave armed forces who took part in Operation Sindoor, and as they continue to inspire us all, we'll try our best whenever given an opportunity.
The match was the first meeting between the two sides, India and Pakistan, since the Pahalgam attack in April. Pakistan-based terror outfit, the Resistance Front TRF, carried out the deadly attack, killing 26 civilians.
Now, the build-up to the high-voltage clash was dominated by calls of boycott from a large portion of the Indian population. The lack of enthusiasm was also visible at the Dubai International Stadium, with several empty seats, a sight unseen during cricket matches between these two cricket-loving nations.
First of 3 possible meetings between the two sides in the Asia Cup started on a controversial note, as Yadav and the Pakistan captain did not shake hands at the toss. Remember, the Indian captain had earlier faced criticism for shaking hands with his Pakistani counterpart after the captain's press conference last week. On the field, India dominated from start to finish. Kuldeep Yadav and Akshar Patel shared 5 wickets between them as the men in blue restricted Pakistan to a meagre 127 for 9. The run chase was a walk in the park. Skipper Yadav remained unbeaten on 47, while Abhishek Sharma and Tilak Verma chipped in with crucial runs as India won by 7 wickets with 25 balls remaining. The victory also helped India extend their dominance over Pakistan to 11-3 in T20Is. And after the win, the Indian team refused to shake hands with Pakistan and share other pleasantries, something that did not bode well with Pakistan head coach Mike Hesson.
India once again have made short work of Pakistan.
All right, next up, let's get you the latest updates from the world of entertainment. A renowned Berlin concert hall, the Konzerthaus, stepped into a host, a performance by Israeli conductor Lahav Shani, after a Belgian festival in Kent abruptly cancelled his appearance. The Flanders Festival cited concerns over his role as chief conductor of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra and a lack of clarity regarding his stance on Israel's actions in Gaza. The decision sparked widespread condemnation from German and Belgian politicians, including Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever. And he had called for the move, and he called the move reckless and irresponsible. Shani's performance with the Munich Philharmonic was a rescheduled event, with a Berlin venue extending a short notice invitation in a show of support for the artist.
The Netherlands has joined a growing list of countries, including Ireland, Spain and Iceland, that are threatening to boycott the next Eurovision Song Contest if Israel is allowed to participate. Dutch public broadcaster cited the ongoing and severe human suffering in Gaza as the reason for its potential withdrawal. The European Broadcasting Union, which organizes the event, is consulting with its member broadcasters on how to handle the situation and has given them until mid-December to make a final decision on their participation.
Brazilian multi-instrumentalist and composer Hermeto Pascoal, who is affectionately known as the Sorcerer of Sounds and the Mad Genius, has died at the age of 89. Born with albinism in Brazil's impoverished northeast, he taught himself to play music and went on to work with legendary artists like Miles Davis. Pascoal, who was known for his unique musical style, which blended jazz, samba, and other Brazilian genres. Well, that's all on World DNA today. But before we wrap up this bulletin, let's take a look at all the climate stories making headlines across the world. Right after that short break, we have more coming up on the other side. Keep watching WION World this month.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the